All right. Good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for joining our virtual learning series, The State of Pregnant and Parenting Students in California. My name is Dr. Quina Hong, pronouns she, hers, and I serve as the Senior Program Manager for Student Basic Needs with Michelson 20mm Foundation. I'm an Asian woman with dark hair, and I'm wearing a white blouse. Before we begin, I would like to acknowledge that today's event is organized on the traditional lands of the Tongva people, and we would like to pay respect to our elders, both past and present. We would like to honor all the ancestral stewards of this land on which we meet their descendants living in over 1,000 tribes, nations, bands, pueblos, communities, and native villages. As we get started with the discussion on the impacts of AB 2881, I'd first like to share a little bit about our foundation. Founded by Dr. Gary K. Michelson and Aaliyah Michelson, the Michelson 20mm Foundation is dedicated to ensuring that everyone, particularly our most vulnerable populations, has access to the equitable post-secondary educational opportunities that lead to meaningful careers. We proudly operate at the cutting edge of higher education to help forward-thinking innovators, nonprofits, and startups close the opportunity gap. We don't do all of this alone. Michelson 20mm is blessed with amazing partners who we'd like to thank for helping make today's webinar possible. Ascend at the Aspen Institute, Blue Shield of California Foundation, California Community Foundation, California Competes, the Education Trust West, and Tipping Point Community. Thank you. It is our hope that you find today's conversation engaging, inspiring, and helpful in your work. We invite you to join the discussion using the chat, post questions in the Q&A box, and share your stories using the hashtag #StudentParents. Our handle is at Michelson20mm. We also appreciate the generous feedback you all have given in our previous webinars, and to ensure that we meet your needs, we'll drop our post-event evaluation in the chat now so that you have it readily available at the conclusion of today's conversation. Additionally, before we jump into our roundtable, I invite you to RSVP and join us for our second annual Student Parent Summit being held on September 5th and 6th, 2024 with our partners at LA Trade Tech. We will have participants ranging from practitioners, advocates, and allies, as well as student parents who will all continue to help build the movement in supporting this student population. We hope that you'll join us. You can find more information regarding the summit using the link dropped in the chat. Now, we're excited to host this roundtable discussion to glean insights directly from student parents post-implementation of AB 2881. The law, which passed in September of 2022, aimed to remove a number of barriers faced by student parents, including difficulties in accessing classes that fit within their limited schedules, which resulted in granting priority registration for student parents. To moderate our conversation and to share more about AB 2881, I'm happy to introduce Dr. Tina Chook. Dr. Chook is an assistant professor of elementary science education at California Polytechnic State University in San Luis Obispo. Dr. Chook has served on our CSU Student Parent Advisory Network for the past 3 years, offering her knowledge and wisdom around supporting parenting students. She is the founder of Student Parent Joy, a media and policy research program, redefining what it means to be a pregnant and/or parenting student within the California university system. Thank you so much for joining us today, Dr. Chook.
Thank you. I'll keep my remarks short. I'm hoping that folks see these slides and it will be slide number 2. I'll just give a quick overview of Assembly Bill 2881 that recently got passed. And I am so excited to see all participants that are logged in and learning with us. And feel free to drop in the chat where you are joining from, the organization, so folks can see this coalition and alliance building that's happening throughout the state of California and also nationally. So feel free to share the organization and or the roles that you play in the chat. That way people know who's present in the room. So as I'm sharing just the slides there, and all of this will be available post webinar, the really key focus is priority registration for student parents in California public higher educational institutions. This includes the California community colleges and CSUs. The UCs fall under different jurisdiction, so they have recommendation for priority registration, but they are not privy to this particular legislation. So we're really focusing on CSUs and also the community college system. Part 2 of this bill was focusing on a student parent webpage, meaning a centralized page that includes resources focused on student parents or students with dependents or parenting students. And we'll use those terms interchangeably. And why is this important? It's to really ensure that when student parents have early access to course registration, they can get the courses they need so they can graduate on time, because childcare responsibilities, childcare facilities are only open certain hours and there's certain constraints and barriers. So we want to make sure higher ed systems understand that and can provide this demographic, the registration that they need so that they can get their classes on time and ready to go. Next slide, please. So what has been the implementation and what are some benefits to this? So the law says, institutions in California, the public ones, California community colleges and CSUs, to provide by June 2023. What we've noted is that in the fall of 24, this last academic year, institutions were trying to work towards this in different aspects, and we'll hear from some student perspectives. And so at the administrative level, it's really thinking about how do we, who are the student parents or students with dependents on your campus? How do we think about eligibility? How do systems, universities and campuses update their registration systems to include this population? And how do we think about compliance issues at the different campuses? And why is this important for student parents? As mentioned earlier, access to courses, childcare, parenting responsibilities. We want to make sure we are reducing time to degree completion, meaning we want students to complete on time and ready to go for the workforce and their life career goals. And then also just a balance, helping students better manage their academic and caretaking duties. And next page. So why is this really important? So I think of it as making visible the care work that we all do, especially student parents, thinking about it through the lens of gender and also the lens of equity. So one, really a core support for student mothers, recognizing, and this is from data, research from IWPR, recognizing that many student parents are women, and particularly they are single mothers. Number two, a disproportionate impact of childcare responsibility often fall on mothers and also students of color, who oftentimes face additional barriers in higher education. And then number three, it's to really make visible and encourage our campuses to provide additional support resources, at least pull them together and curate them so that student parents can go to one place, one location to think about childcare resources, financial aid, basic needs, and advising that is tailored to the assets and needs of our diverse student parents and their families. And then the next slide. And so we'll talk a little bit about this with our student parents, but what has been happening in terms of early implementation? What happens is a law gets made, it gets passed down to the practitioners, the folks who have to do the actionable and the changing behavior. So what's actually happening? So we'll talk a little bit more about this. One of the challenges that we've been hearing is that, are all student parents identified, notified, communicated to that they have this benefit and that they can access priority registration? And then number two, we've also heard students across campuses differing processes in terms of having multiple groups having priority registration. And what does that mean? What is this actual benefit? And does it end up benefiting student parents? Some opportunities that we do see is, how do we systematize student parent data collection from the point of application from Cal State Apply for the Cal State system to enrollment, all the way through course registration, and how do we update that information over time in our data systems? And then also thinking about considerations for staffing. Who is responsible for student parents on your campus? And I think this is as part of this larger conversation of, how do we make visible student parents, their caretaking responsibilities, and then making sure they're visible in our data systems? And I think that is the last slide. And what I'll do next is it's my honor to introduce three amazing student parents from across the state of California. And as I announce your name and read your bios, please turn on your camera, and that way folks can see who you are. So first we have Araceli Castillo. Araceli is a first-generation college student who received her Bachelor of Arts in Liberal Studies, preparation for teaching, and a minor in math from San Jose State University. After 8 years of teaching middle school math and science and 1 year as a new mom, Araceli decided to put her career on pause and focus all her time on her family. Now a mother of two school-aged children, she has returned to college to take early childhood education classes in preparation to become a transitional kindergarten teacher. Araceli attends San Jose City College, taking both online and night classes with a recent GPA of 4.0 for the spring semester. Welcome, Araceli. And you can see her beautiful photos on our slide. Next, we have Andy Barnett. She uses she, her pronouns. Andy graduated from Fresno State with a Bachelor of Arts in Liberal Studies last month and is currently attending Fresno State as a student in the Rural Teacher Residency Program. Andy plans to teach middle school math in a rural community upon her completion in this program next spring. She has two amazing kids, a 3-year-old daughter and a 9-year-old son. Together, they are her why for everything she does in life. Recognizing the challenges faced as a parent scholar, Andy is committed to using her voice and past experiences to support and uplift others who are juggling life, both as a college student and as a parent. Welcome, Andy. And lastly, we're joined by Marisa Pisano. Marisa is currently enrolled as a full-time student in liberal studies at Cal State Channel Islands, following her transfer from Ventura College, where she graduated with an associate's degree. Marisa's educational journey is driven by her passion in early childhood education and goal to join CSU Channel Islands Integrated Teacher Education Program, ITEP program, to earn her bachelor's degree and teaching credential. Outside of academia, Marisa is a proud mom of 3 wonderful kids, Mason, who is 6, and twins Anika and Gianna, turning 3 in July. As a dual student parent both at Ventura College and Cal State Channel Islands, Marisa is deeply involved in campus life. She dedicates her time to various early childhood education events and initiatives at both institutions. Please join me in welcoming our student parents. So excited to have you all. So one of my first questions I have is really share your background a little bit. I read a little bit about your bio and what motivated you to pursue higher education. And we'll have Andy kick us off.
Hi. Okay, so a little bit about my background. I was a returning student. I graduated from high school about 10 years before I went back to college. And it was really my son starting school that kicked off me figuring out what I wanted to do with life, and what direction I wanted to go. So, a little bit of important background knowledge. My son has special needs, so that kept me from pursuing my higher education sooner than I did. I was a full-time caregiver for him. And when he began kindergarten, it was COVID times. And they said, here's a laptop, your kid's going to go to kindergarten on a computer. And I watched my son, who already has various struggles, struggle so much. And I asked, what can we do? How can we support his education? And I had so much pushback and I was frustrated, and I started to advocate for him. So that's kind of where I started. I'm advocating for my son, but if it's my son and I'm watching it happen, how many other kids are struggling, and how can I support other kids in getting their education? So here we are, fast forward some years, and I'm going into teaching, hoping to just advocate for all of the kiddos and their differences and how they learn and what they need. So yeah, that's a little bit of my background. So.
Araceli, how about you? And we'll follow it with Marisa.
Yeah, so my family, my parents had done a little bit of junior college, but no one else in our immediate family had graduated from college. And so I really didn't know much about college, much about the process. In my mind, it was graduate high school and work retail, and I didn't want to do that. And so thought about junior college, just starting there and figuring out what I wanted to do next. but I had done some tutoring. And then after talking to my high school counselor, figured out, oh, there's student loans and all of these things that you could study at college. So I started out as a science major and was able to move away for college, and that was great. I because of my tutoring experience, I really enjoyed it and decided to pursue teaching, and then had that goal in mind during my entire education.
Hi. So mine's a bit different. My dad was in the military. He's a USMC veteran. So right now he is at 100% disability. So the benefits to that for his kids is we get free schooling in California, which is a complete blessing because like I said, I have 3 kids, so I don't think I would be able to afford school. Um, so the way I got into my education was after high school, I was actually on a softball scholarship out in Arkansas. But plans changed and I ended up having a baby, and I was a single mom for 2 years I came home for 2 years and I was at Ventura College. So I started Ventura College as a single mom, not really knowing where to start. Feeling like I was a disappointment, but I I just started reaching out to different outreaches for student parents and trying to connect to student parents who are older than me because I was only 18. So my friends, they didn't have kids. So it was a bit harder to reach out to people that I knew because I was very young. And honestly, my son, he just kept me going. He was just such a sunshine in my life. And he would always be so excited every time I'd go on my laptop to do homework. He would have his toy laptop next to me. And he's like, "What are you doing, Mom?" And I'm all, "Homework." And then he's like pretending I'm doing homework too. So honestly, my kids really truly keep me going in my education journey.
Great. I love how kids see and model after their family and just to see you all in schooling. And Marisa, I would love for you to share with us your experiences being a student mother at both Ventura and Channel Islands. What has that been like, especially the initial experiences?
The initial experiences were very difficult because in my head, I'm like, okay, I still want to be a student athlete, but I'm also a parent. So I had to rely on my village a lot. When my son was a newborn, I had just given birth in June and I was writing classes in August. And I was playing softball right away. So I did find that balance, but it definitely takes a village. I relied on my grandma and grandpa uh, to watch my son. And there was days I was at school all day from 8 a.m. anatomy class to practice that ended at 4:30. So it was a really long day. And there was days where I would tell myself, is this really what I want? Because, I miss my son. I don't think that this is what I want to do. So luckily, Ventura College, their softball program was very, very encouraging and helpful to me. They pointed me to the direction of CDR, Child Development Resources in Oxnard. So I went on a waiting list for that and continued going to school. And I only ended up playing softball for 1 year because I chose the path to focus on my son and my career. And I decided that I loved teaching. I've been around kids a lot. My mom was a daycare provider for 15 years. So I grew up around daycare kids and we went camping. We went to Magic Mountain, so many amusement parks together. And she had told me, she's like, back in my day, um, there was no benefits for student mothers. It was very unheard of. So she took the role of being a stay-at-home mom and made income by babysitting. So she's like, you know, your dad has this veteran benefits. I really think that you should take advantage of it and continue your education journey. So after that talk, I decided that teaching was my passion. So that's what got me into early childhood education and elementary education.
Great. Andy, I saw you nod your head as you're listening to Marisa. Do you want to add or resonate or make connections to Marisa's experience and tell us a little bit about your experience navigating your studies as a student parent at Fresno State?
Definitely. I liked what Marissa said about leaning on her village. It took me a long time to find my village and then learn to trust people within my village. My son, I mentioned, has some struggles of his own, medical complications that made it difficult for me to find childcare. And I don't have much family in California, so I had to learn to trust the perfect stranger with my babies. And well, that's not an easy task, but it's also not easy to try and do it all on your own. So leaning on the village that I had to create and learning to trust my village and accept that help was a big piece of my journey as a parent scholar. I did find that with my kids' schedule, finding that sweet spot of, okay, I have childcare from this time to this time, and I need to have this class, but it's only offered at this time. And just kind of juggling routines and schedules when that was such an important part of my son's world, especially. I think that was something I struggled with. And even having a village, if it's not in the cards, it's just not in the cards. And I think sometimes we have to accept that, okay, maybe not right now. I think scheduling can be a really big piece when you're looking at classes, co-curricular activities. For me, I was a volunteer at Fresno State with a PAW program, and even sometimes finding time to be a part of something I really wanted to do. I really wanted to volunteer my time for this, but do my kids have something going on? Do I have childcare for that? And just kind of navigating what that looked like for myself, but also for my kids, because I didn't want them to think, well, mom's choosing to be somewhere else. And I didn't want them to think that I was sacrificing time with them to go do something for school. So I worked really hard to find that balance and to make sure that my kids knew that anything I was doing either had a significant purpose or was going to play a critical role in my success in school down the line. And of course, making up that time with my kiddos because they deserve to have their mom present. So when their dad wasn't available, and I'm like, okay, all right, can't do this right now. We're going to go be with the kids. And anyway, long story short, I think that for me, a big piece of it was scheduling and relying on the village I had to create. So, yeah.
And Araceli, how about you? What were some resources that supported you as a student, and how did you navigate as a student parent?
Yeah, jumping on what Andy said of the scheduling kind of dictates all. So I had thought about doing classes last year before my younger son was in public school full time, and it wasn't going to happen. Trying to figure out, can I do Saturday classes? Can I do something during the day while he's in his co-op preschool? And it just, for me, it got too complicated and too maddening to just, it can't happen. It just, if it doesn't work, it doesn't work. And there's no way around it. So for me this year when I started, it had to be working around their schedules, which for me meant doing things while they were in school. Online works because if they are homesick, then I'm not going to school because it's me who's going to be home with them, or doing my night classes when I know that's late enough so that my husband can get home in time, because can't do classes that start at 2-3 o'clock. That's school pickup. So a lot of moving around and trying to see that the classes that I want work around what my life routine is and what my kids' routine is.
So what I'm hearing is scheduling and trying to figure out classes that work with your rich schedules that you have in terms of your family responsibility, caretaking responsibilities, and so forth. So let's get into the heart of it. So this law was passed. One, how did you hear about it? And then number two, how did you or your peers take advantage of it? What were some stories that were personal to you, or you had colleagues or friends that either benefited or missed the benefit? What was your interaction in general? And then I'll maybe first have Andy share her experience, and then maybe Marisa, and then Araceli.
Perfect. So my first experience with AB 2881 was a health educator on our campus who was my advisor with the PAW program. She actually let me know about the priority registration piece of it, and I was so excited. I was also very mindful that it was my very last semester of college where I would need to have that registration piece. So I knew that I only needed 4 classes and I know they're going to fill up really fast. Unfortunately, when I went to register, my classes were all full. So I didn't get to reap the benefits of the bill, but that's okay because I know that, it's still new. There's kinks. We're going to work them out. And someday there will be parents who get to log in and get all their classes, and it's going to be magical. So my experience wasn't necessarily what I was hoping for, and that's all right. Lessons learned. I do have 2 friends right now who are moving up to Fresno State, and they got to take advantage of the priority registration. And one of them got what she needed. The other one only just recently decided she was going to go to school, and I'm helping her to navigate the scheduling challenges that can happen. But I'm excited that both of them got registered for the priority registration on our campus. They're both aware of it. And I'm really excited to see what this all can do for parent scholars. So, yeah.
Great. Thank you, Andy. Marisa, how about you? What was your experience, and how did you know, or if it's not your personal experience, if you heard other classmates that took advantage of this opportunity?
So since I'm a dual enrollment student at Ventura College and Channel Islands, I started my education journey at Ventura College in 2018, and I actually never heard of it. I only recently heard of it after my first year transferring from Ventura College to Channel Islands. And I'm not quite sure if that's because the first year at Ventura College, I was a student athlete, so we got priority registration. But either way, when I transferred over to Channel Islands, I kind of had to hunt for it because I had to call student services to ask, like, hey, I have 3 kids. This was after I had already had a semester with them and I got the last pick classes. And it was really hard with trying to go off of my son's schedule, my twins' schedule that's different from my son's because they're in preschool, one's in kinder, and then also my schedule with classes of how can I fit this in. So after a whole semester of stress, I finally was just like, I need to reach out to student services to see what they can do. And I originally had reached out in regards to my dad's veteran benefits, hoping that there was a priority registration through that. So I called and they're like, oh, yes, there is, but actually if you have, because I told them I have kids and my chaotic scheduling. They're like, I heard you say you had kids. We have this ABA 2881 that allows priority registration for student parents. And I'm like, oh, really? I've never heard of that. And so they're like, you haven't? I'm like, no. So they told me what to do on the California State University Channel Island website to change to where it shows that I'm a student parent. So I ended up this semester getting priority registration, and it helped so much. I got first pick in all the classes that I needed. I was so relieved after came off of that phone call with student services at Channel Islands. And now that I knew about that, my cousin who recently just had a baby, she's from Fillmore as well, and she's at Ventura College. I had told her to go to the counseling or student services and talk to them about priority registration too. and she's definitely reached out to them, and she has priority registration for this fall as well.
Great. Araceli, what was your experience like, your interactions with this new bill?
So I just recently returned to school in January, and since it was a late decision, I was one of the last to register, so I had last pick of all my classes and just kind of grabbed and snagged what I was able to. During the registration process at San Jose City College, we had a student orientation that we had to do virtual online. So I went through, watched the video, like 2 hours, walking through everything. And in that orientation video, it did say that student parents had priority registration. Great. I was excited for that. I knew I couldn't take advantage of it that semester, but I was already looking forward to thinking about fall, just so I can get those core classes, which really fill up quickly. And so I had went to campus to speak with registration just to find out, what do I need to do? Do I need to bring in birth certificates? Like, what proof do you need so that I can take advantage of this in the future? Registration told me, no, you're fine. When you registered, I remembered when I registered, it asked me if I had any children under 18 in my household. Yes, I had put that I had two. So she told me, you're fine, you're set, it's good. So I had that priority registration date on my calendar ready to go so I could do my fall registration on time. Eager to do my classes, I went to register and I was blocked. It wasn't open to me. Didn't know what to do. I emailed registration, no answer. I called registration, no answer. So I didn't do anything. The next day, I think for our schedule, our school, priority registration was 2 days before open enrollment. So the next day, same sort of thing, was emailing multiple times. Please, someone get back to me so I can get this. I called multiple times, and so finally, I had an email response that told me, no, you're not listed as a student parent. If you want to take advantage, go ahead and reapply. And so for me, it was great that I had my mother around, because then I had to take, a 2-hour chunk to reapply to the school, to do my verification and all sorts of things in order to take advantage of it. I have no idea why that happened. But after I reapplied for the school as a returning student, then something worked out well in the system and I was granted. And so I did get to take advantage of it, because 2 days later, once open registration happened, all those core classes that I had already gotten into were full. It was really stressful, and I'm hoping that the kinks get worked out. And for me in the future, I know that I'm going to go back to registration, confirm, and talk to a counselor and confirm. And I don't know how many times I'm going to have to confirm with people just to figure out that my spring, since spring will be my last semester, I just get the classes that I need so I can be done.
I just want to applaud you for your persistence and resilience and just this notion of like never giving up and problem solving to get to the heart of the issue when you didn't cause the problem. So I think that is a really common trait that I find working with student parents, in that there's a problem and they will be so persistent and motivated to get at the heart of it because they know this is really important to them and not giving up. So I just wanted to highlight that and applaud you, even though the system has created the problem. There was this great question in the chat in terms of the process to verify that you're a student parent. Araceli, you shared sort of just like you ticked a box on one of the registration forms. Andy or Marisa, do you remember sort of like whether you checked off a box or someone said like, you need to show me some proof? Like, what was that process like? And I'll have Andy go first and then Marisa share.
For Fresno State, there's a link that you can go to and you just add your dependents into your account. And then once you have your dependents in there, it marks you as a parent scholar. So that's kind of how that process works. So you don't have to reapply to the school or anything crazy. It's actually a pretty streamlined process. It was rather simple.
Going off of Andy, it's the same at Channel Islands. Once I had talked to the student services, they kind of walked me through the process on the website, but it was very easy. I just clicked a box stating that I had dependents, and it took 24 hours for the system to process it, and then the next day my priority registration changed.
Great. And I would share at Cal Poly, it's the same. You fill out a form, our Students with Dependents team flags you in our data system, which then goes towards the registrar, and then they sort of open up the priority registration system. And I wanted to talk a little bit about RSLE's experience around administrative burden. So a lot of campus oftentimes will ask you to refill out forms. And that's sometimes the burden becomes on you as a student. And it can be very taxing. You're like, well, I already filled that out. What do you mean I had to fill that out again? Right. And for some students, they might give up because it's like so many forms. Like, you want me to bring in this birth certificate and that tax form and this. And those are actual barriers that prevent you from studying, for caring for your children. So I just want to keep that in mind, especially for administrators that are in the room, that, we don't need more paperwork. We have to trust our student parents that they are checking, this box off because they have caretaking responsibilities, and that for the most part, people aren't going to check that off to gain access. There's this, a lot of conversations around, well, what if people, do this falsely? And, it's a very uncommon practice. People would do that. I think, one, we have to trust our students. And I mean, that's obviously a larger conversation. So I hope that institutions aren't putting this burden of proof or this administrative burden on students, which precludes them, especially the students who may not have documentation status, because for that population, there's a lot of administrative burden and so forth. So I just wanted to make that comment. There's also a great question around financial aid. So for students who apply for financial aid, that information is also, there's a privacy concern. So there's sort of students who self-report and sort of say, like, yes, I'm a student with dependent. And that's one of the big issues of, like, how do we make sure we get all the student parents? It's not just you happen to bump into this counselor who is aware of that benefit. And I love how Araceli shared that in the orientation video that she was asked to watch, her demographic group was listed. And so she then was able to follow up. And I think that's a way of institutionalizing and systematizing and communicating to all of your students that a benefit is available to you, and here are the next steps. So I want to move on to another question. At your campuses, what resources have you benefited from, especially as a student parent? And then I'll have maybe Araceli, if you can start with us, like, what resources have you tapped into that really have supported you as a student parent?
For me, I think it's just about the scheduling, the flexibility. I don't really utilize my school campus outside of my school course hours. We have local libraries in the area that I utilize more for research, studying, meetups, things like that. Technology, I use our local library's technology to help me get my courses done. So that has been my main source of support. With school, it's just getting the classes that I need at the times I need.
Great. And Marisa, how about you? What are some resources? You've talked a little bit about community, but share with us other resources, whether it's individuals or communities, whether through your athletics community or other communities that you've been a part of.
Yeah, of course. So I actually had a great experience at Ventura College this past semester when I figured out that I can utilize their on-campus childcare. And unfortunately, the grant has ended. It did grant me childcare for a whole year for my twins, but unfortunately, I wasn't able to utilize it this semester because there was no more funding, they said. But when I did have it, it was amazing. I was able to take in-person classes. So I would just drop my twins off at the preschool and they learned so much. It was based off of STEM. And I felt confident that I was leaving them in the best hands possible. And after class, I would just come pick them up. And they were so happy. They were just, I think that's where they got their love of learning. It was just so magical for them to be around other children their age, learning, playing. Um, so I definitely use the Ventura College on-campus childcare. I utilize their pantry. They have student pantries where you're able to put your student ID number in and you're able to get a snack at no cost to you. And once a week, they have food drives. So I was able to utilize that as well for my family. At Channel Islands, it is a bit further from where I live. So I'm not on campus because they don't have childcare. They don't have a on-campus childcare, unfortunately. So I'm taking all online classes there and just trying the best that I can at home.
Andy, how about you? What have been some key resources, individuals or centers and community that you've drawn from?
Quite a few on my campus, actually. So, just to list a few of the big ones, we have a student cupboard. So that's where I could get groceries. They have lots of produce and even diapers and wipes. So that was super helpful while my daughter was still in diapers. Such a blessing. Our health center, taking advantage of seeing doctors on campus. If I'm already on campus, it was just one less task I had to navigate. So that was very helpful, still is. Including the pharmacy with extremely low cost medications that I could stock up on, saving money since as a student, I can't work full time and be a student and be a mom. So saving money was a big piece for me, super helpful. Let's see. Oh, I worked on campus. I would consider that a resource because I was able to lock in childcare as if I were working a normal 9 to 5. So where I had classes, I could just fill in my other hours on campus with working. Again, taking away that commute time and all of that was beneficial for a while. What else? There were a few professors that were open to parent scholars and said, here's my phone number. If you have a parent emergency, you just text me. A few that offered to let us bring our kids to class. And that was so great. So those are a few awesome resources that I got to take advantage of.
Great. I want to address this question and comment around financial aid because there's actually an upcoming bill that's sort of in the legislation. And I'd love for you to share as you feel like what has been your experience with financial aid, especially as a student parent, and thinking about, your aid package and what would you recommend? And what were some conversations that happened or didn't happen or wished would have happened in terms of your financial aid package and around your cost of attendance and so forth? And I'll sort of maybe start with Marisa if you have any thoughts around financial aid and your experiences working with them.
So with financial aid, I actually was very lucky, like I said, with the child care at Ventura College. I was eligible for that grant. So they did pay for all my child care costs for that whole year. And with twins, it's very expensive. So I was very thankful for that. Classes, I was also eligible for the community college 2-year promise grant. So that paid for my classes. As far as any additional financial aid, I did qualify for one that helped. And then when I transferred over to Channel Islands, that's when my dad got to 100% disability. So his veteran bill paid for my classes. It just doesn't pay for any extra fees. So that really helped. But that's my take on financial aid. It's very helpful for student parents.
Great. Andy, what's your experience for you?
Um, I think I have a unique financial aid experience and I don't want to go off topic too much, but in short, financial aid is extremely helpful, especially considering you're taking time that you can't work. I mean, I suppose you could. There was a point where I had 3 jobs and was going to class and trying to be a mom, but let me tell you, burnout is real. I recognized that I wasn't showing up for my kids the way I needed to, and I had to cut back significantly and figure out where to make those sacrifices. So having that financial aid cushion and various grants certainly is helpful. I think if there was anything, I was very young. I still am young. I'm young. And I was never really taught financial success strategies. So when I got a grant, one of the first times, there was a little bit of reckless spending. So I think it would be maybe beneficial, especially for young single parents, to maybe have like a um, financial literacy kind of like seminar. Because it's so easy to rack yourself up with student loan debt pretty quick. So, yeah.
Thank you, Andy. And Araceli, how about you? Your experience with financial aid?
So San Jose City College, when I first started, had waived student fees the first semester, and that was a big incentive for me to apply and go back because I had been out of the workforce for 7 years at that point, and our budget was tight. We had already managed to live off one income, and so for me, I had to submit the FAFSA. You know, I had no data, so it was off of my husband's data, but it was clearly stated on the website, as long as everyone applies for the FAFSA, you get your class fees waived. And so that was a huge, huge help because it wasn't me trying to figure out, well, where's this extra money going to come from when things were already tight. And for the next semester, that program ended. That wasn't happening anymore. So I was then kind of on my own digging, trying to figure out what I could find through our county office of ed. They offer grants for people pursuing classes in early childhood education, teacher education programs. So I was able to get that grant. So I know that I have my next 2 classes paid for that way. But I would say that had a huge impact on the decision whether or not I went back or not.
Great. So what I'm hearing is the theme of institutional supports, both policies such as priority registration, resources such as basic needs, coursework, professors, staff members who are aware and can connect you to the resources, and also the financial support, understanding that student parents have a lot of different demands, cost demands and time demands on their time. And I want to close off with one final question. You all showed up today to share your experiences and be vulnerable and serve as advocates for student parents when this is one segment of your life and you'll graduate and live these thriving futures as future teachers. Share with us, why is it important for you and all of us on this call to advocate for student parents? And what has it meant for you? Or if you want to share any exciting work that's going on in your campus around advocacy and support, this is the last question. So why is it important for you to advocate for student parents? And then maybe I'll open it up with Marisa and then Andy and Araceli. So Marisa, you want to share why you are here and why it's important for you?
Yes, of course. So why I am here is I'm advocating for any young students that are new to college, new to parenting, and their world had flipped upside down. So the last thing on their mind was looking for ways to pay for college. So I think by advocating awareness to the specific needs and challenges that I faced as a student parent, it'll ensure that any future student parents, no matter the age, are able to tap into this benefit, and ultimately it'll support their family and their needs.
Thank you. Andy, how about you? What motivates you?
What motivates me is honestly the struggles that I went through. The same way that I want to advocate for all students who experience education the way my son did, is the same way that I want to advocate for student parents who are navigating what it is to try to earn their degree while being a parent, and all the road bumps that come when those worlds kind of collide. I am really excited to use my voice to continue to push policies and just general support and resources for student parents. I am working with Melissa Norris at Fresno State. We just met yesterday to talk about a parent scholar group, just a couple parent scholars that'll work together to find resources and gather data. How can we support parent students on their journeys and things like that? So I'm really excited for that. And I think that it's important to recognize that the success of a student parent is generational. That parent getting their degree will trickle down, benefiting the child and showing them the importance of higher education and so on and so forth. So I just think it's really important to support student parents on their journeys. So, yeah.
Thank you. And Araceli, how about you? What brings you here, and why is it important for you to advocate for student parents, for all of us?
I think because I have both experiences of being a student before kids and knowing what that was like, and how much flexibility and freedom I really did have to not choose classes at 7 a.m. You know, my schedule started at noon and I did afternoons, and it was great having that. But now it's very different. As a student parent, my goal is to get in, get out, be done. And I feel like that should be honored. We should have that priority registration so that we can have our needs met and then be able to venture out into the careers that we are choosing to follow.
Great. And with that, let's give a round of applause to our panelists. I'm just like so thrilled to just have you and your time and your expertise. And I always think about this quote, we lift as we climb. And what you are doing is making sure that the barriers that you all face don't exist for those who follow after you. And that's what brings me to this work so passionately. I'm going to pass it over to Queena, who will sort of transition to the Q&A portion of the meeting.
Thank you so much to our panelists and to, Dr. Chook, thank you for moderating this conversation. And again, I just appreciate your vulnerability and your honesty in sharing your experiences. I believe that you're not alone in this, right? And so I think this resonated with a lot of folks, especially in the audience. And so thank you. So we do have a few questions, and Dr. Chook, feel free to stay on as well and answer any questions that we might have. But one of the questions that we received in the chat earlier was around online experience. And so I don't know if any of you were doing virtual during COVID or whatnot, or Marissa, I think you mentioned also that you had some online classes. And so as student parents, do you prefer online or in person as you're going through this process? And as also if you had any sort of online community or resources? And
Yeah.
I'll hand it over to Marissa first. Yeah.
Sorry.
No, you're fine.
I was saying that taking online definitely has its benefits as far as there's so much flexibility with your kids. Like I have my kids laying on my bed while I'm on class meetings, and they're fine. They're coloring. They're honestly learning with me. My 6-year-old, he was a part of one of my science classes Zooms, and he had so many questions for me. And it was just awesome to be able to open up those conversations on school. And I would always tell him this is why it's important to learn young that education is good for you. And I know when you're young, it's too early to go to school. I don't want to. Can I just stay home and go on my iPad? Yes, of course, that sounds nice, but ultimately in your life, learning is really good for you. So I personally like online classes, but I do have a learning disability. So in order to utilize those benefits, it's actually only in-person classes. So I'm at a bit of a conflict in that area. So math and science classes, I try to take in person as best as I can. But English, child development classes, education classes, I take online because that is my thing and I'm very good at it. So it creates more opportunity to stay home, save on money, and be with my kids more.
Thank you. Araceli or Andy, do you all have thoughts?
For me, same. I prefer online classes. I think you do have to be disciplined with yourself in forming a schedule so that progress does happen. I work as a substitute teacher, so for me, it's really easy on the weeks that I know that I have more to do. I don't go to work that day so that I can have that time at home to get my coursework done while my kids are at school to be able to do. My college also has fast finish classes, I think that they're called. So hybrid classes. So for us, instead of doing one semester class, each of those classes are concentrated into 8-week chunks. And so that's been really helpful because then I know that I can focus all of my energy in those 8 weeks on this one class, hybrid, partially online, and then just my one day a week going on campus. So that scheduling again wise, that's been helpful for me.
Awesome, thank you. So another question that we received in the chat, were there any sort of community resources, so anything that was off campus that were really helpful for you, specifically with studying or just in terms of your academics? Anyone can answer.
I'm actually creating a community like that at Ventura College right now. It's more so for any child development majors, any education majors, or any majors that work with children or have children. It's called we came up with it, me and my colleague, Caring Hearts Club. So instead of like a child development club, or it's called Caring Hearts Club because ultimately our goal is to care for kids. And we wanted to create this club at Ventura College because there are no resources as far as for student parents or anyone underneath that umbrella. So far it's new, but I am working towards a goal on that right now.
That's awesome. It takes so much initiative in the time that you already have limited, and but I think there's definitely value there. So thank you so much for doing that. Awesome. Any other community resources? And audience, feel free to drop any sort of suggestions or community resources that you all might have in your areas as examples as well.
Queen, I wanted to just share a comment. Someone had asked about, this bill is specific to California. How might we think about bills rolling out across the country that serves as a model? So they asked about how did this bill sort of come about, or what advice do you have in terms of getting a bill like this? That's very specific. It's priority registration for student parents in higher ed. And so just a little bit of history and background. I think having a legislative champion very much helps at the state level who is concerned with higher ed around equity issues around student parents. So like shopping around to see if you can find that person. And I think California in particular had sort of champions at different campuses and community organizations and funders who were sort of eager to bring people together. So I think community building, so things that Andy has mentioned with the parent scholars, Marisa has mentioned in terms of the community that she's building. It's like if you're one person, you're stronger when you're 2 people, 3 people, 4 people. Now you have a group. Now you have a group name. Now you can go have a meeting or call a meeting. And then you find others. So I think it's a lot of it's coalition building. It's like student activism work that bubbles up, finding a faculty ally. So I was a student parent found me when I became faculty. So then I can leverage my power to support their work. And so now they had another +1 member, and I'm sort of shopping around like, can I find an administrator to join our work? So the more people you could bring in, the more visibility and sharing your stories, I think that is really helpful versus individual efforts and individuals, tackling these individual barriers when it's actually a barrier that impacts a collective group of students. And so I think for me, it's always about data, it's about storytelling, about equity, right? So student parents want to graduate, get their degree, get the jobs, improve their livelihoods for their families, right? Like that's what's happening. And we want to make that very clear for the folks who are in decision-making power. Like, if you give us this, we're going to graduate on time. Well, let's track our retention records. Let's track our graduation records. Like, who are the student parents? How many children do they have? Is there childcare on campus? Like, all those things is important. And that shouldn't be the labor of students. That should be the labor of staff and administrators. They should be doing that job, and we should call to them, be like, you need to have that information. It's not my job to collect student parent data for you. That's your job. Okay. We're just like, you got to just demand the people at your universities to do their job and do their jobs well, because they're there to serve you. So that was a little bit longer of a rant, but pass it back over
No,
to
it's
Queena.
so important. I feel like everybody's applauding and agreeing, Tina. And absolutely, I think there's power in numbers, and for sure. Thank you so much for sharing that. And then I think also on that piece, like California is definitely a model state sometimes, and so happy to like share like language in terms of the bill and the drafting of all of that, because it's possible, right? Like we're just one state, but it's possible to do that across the country. And so absolutely, please feel free to reach out if you have questions about advocating for this within your state. Awesome. Let's see if there are other questions in the chat. What do you wish the college administrators, faculty, and staff knew or did differently to better support parent scholars? Andy, it looks like you are thinking.
I am. I think that I'm feeling some type of way about the fact that parent scholars have just gotten priority registration when other groups of individuals have had it. It feels like a little bit of exclusion. I'm glad that it's finally rolling. And I think that I wish everyone would recognize how serious a parent scholar schedule can get. I know for myself, I have one child with special needs. I've got a toddler. I was a single mom for a really long time. And then I jumped into the world of higher education and battled my own health struggles. And just these things alone, I'm looking at my appointments. My kids both have various medical appointments. And then you've got school, you've got daycare, you've got work, you've all these things. And I think that a lot of times it's, well, they're a mom or they're a dad. And that's just how it is. But recognizing that in order for me to earn my degree, I have to make so many sacrifices or adjust my schedule. And I just wish that there was more understanding in the way that a parent's schedule works and the way that I'm not trying to be like a bad student if I'm not in my class. I want to be there, but if something happens, I am always a parent first. So I think that professors, faculty, staff, administration need to really open their eyes to recognizing that student parents want to succeed. Obviously, they don't want to spend their money to fail, but also I'm always going to be a parent first. And there's got to be a mutual understanding there. So, yeah.
Thank you. Marissa or Sally, do you have a wish that you feel like faculty and administrators would know about you as a parent scholar?
I just want to echo what Andy said, that we are parents first, and that's our priority. I've had to miss classes because kids were sick and fallen behind because hospital visits, and that's just the way it is. My professors have been very open to communication. So as long as administrators know that they can support faculty and they're being able to be flexible with their students, then that's what's the most helpful.
I
Yeah.
completely agree with what Andy said is on how other students had gotten priority registration before student parents, like how I went into my first year of college. I got priority as a athlete and not a mom. And I think that's something to highlight, that student athletes are getting priority registration over parents. And I understand they're equally as important, but we're just barely now seeing that we're equally as important. So I think just more advocating for student parents is definitely my wish to all faculty. And I had an amazing teacher at Ventura College this past semester that accepted late work too. And not because I was lazy or anything, it's just parent stuff comes up and things happen. And that was a huge help, is just understanding.
Thank you. That's really like insightful in terms of like what we really want our administrators to think. And I think the big takeaway here is like it's such a salient identity to us, but sometimes it's such a invisible thing for others to see. And so definitely acknowledging that. So one of the last questions I'm going to ask that's in our chat is, what do we do with the data that's being collected with AB 2881? And Dr. Trick, I'm going to maybe hand that one over to you in terms of how do we incorporate this into a mission at an institution and really ingrain parenting students into all things of an institution, not just like a single idea or a single program. Like, how do we integrate that?
I think California is moving in the direction of making sure we identify student parents and that one student parents feel comfortable and safe to share that they're a student parent. There's still a lot of cultural bias that exists on our campuses among community members at large, whether it's faculty, staff, and some may be just people don't even know it, right? I've had students share they don't want to share that they are a single parent because of all the negative stereotypes that come along with it, or that they will be penalized. For example, on our campus, we recently had a student father who, for whatever reason, their athletic scholarship was no longer renewed when they found out that he became a father. So, you know, when the story comes out like that, why would anyone want to share that they're a student parent when your fiscal financial resources in the form of scholarships will be taken away in for whatever reason, right? Whether it is that he is a student parent or other reasons, right? The fact that he could have finished his degree, perhaps otherwise. So there's still those stories that exist when internships don't get awarded, or you don't get invited to certain events, when they make assumptions in terms of your abilities or your time constraints, and those opportunities aren't offered. So we still have a long ways to go to make sure student parents feel comfortable to say that, yes, I am a student parent, and that data will be used for student parent, their benefit, and not as a way to penalize them. So I think really thinking about, especially students who are more vulnerable, right? Undocumented students. I've talked to them in terms, or those with DACA status, like, will, taking a public benefit penalize them later on when they're applying for immigration status, right? So those are things, the intersectional identities of our student parents, that we have to be really careful about, like, who has access to that data and what are you going to do with it, right? So I think having student parents at the table is really important in formulating where that data sits, how that data will be used, and how will we, make sure our programming and policies support the success of student parents towards retention and graduation. So for me as a faculty, I think having it visible is very important. So you can compare, are we making sure student parents aren't pushed out of the system before they graduate? Are they graduating at the same rate? And if not, why not? Right? Every dean should know how many student parents they have in their college. They should know, like, if there's a significant number or any number, are their childcare needs met? How are we supporting our childcare center so that our student parents can get the classes? Do they all know that they have priority registration? Is there student affairs folks to support them? So I think it touches all these different parts. So I think it's a cultural shift. Our campuses have been designed for students without dependents. And it's in the more recent shift where we've expanded college access that our student demographics have been more diverse. And I think it's reshaping the whole institution, making sure everyone in the system knows that, yes, there are student parents in every aspect of the different colleges, departments, and they're coming through community college, they're coming in as first-year students, they're coming in as non-traditional, however you want to call them. And how do we think about, does our programming support their academic success? So it's really expanding our thinking and ensuring that our data allows us to tell the story of equity and making sure we're supporting them with our services.
Amazing. Thank you so much for sharing. And with that, I'm going to have us close out. But again, thank you to our panelists and moderator for having this conversation. And I just want to take a moment to applaud all the institutions that have made so many changes in their culture, as well as programmatically and policy-wise, to support parenting students. So thank you. So as I close out, thank you everyone again for the conversations in the chat. We hope that you walked away from today's event informed, inspired, and better equipped to support pregnant and parenting students on your campus. Before you head out, again, please take a moment to complete our post-event evaluation. The link will be dropped in the chat again. So the State of Pregnant and Parenting Students in California was presented by the Michelson 20mm Foundation as part of our mission to advance equity for all students and families. We want to once again thank our partners, Ascend at the Aspen Institute, Blue Shield of California, California Foundation, the California Community Foundation, California Competes, the Education Trust West, and Tipping Point Community for helping us make today happen. We invite you to join us in this journey by continuing to ask the questions about what work is being done on your campuses. How are you serving your pregnant and parenting students? Who are they and how are you reaching them? Are their voices being heard and included into your equity work? The recording of today's discussion will be posted on our YouTube channel, the Michelson 20mm Foundation, and will be emailed out by tomorrow. To learn more about our work with pregnant and parenting students, please visit our website using the link in the chat. Additionally, if you or your organization wants to become part of our work focused on supporting pregnant and parenting students, please reach out to me personally at q.hong@20mm.org. You can also stay engaged by signing up for our newsletter at 20mm.org to receive news and updates about our Pregnant and Parenting Student Project, as well as our other events and program. Thank you again for joining us in centering needs for pregnant and parenting students, and have a wonderful rest of your day. Thank you.